see everybody this morning. It's a beautiful day out, isn't it? Okay, so before we go into the sermon, we've got to talk about this picnic coming up on July 17th. How many of you like to eat? Seriously? Some of you didn't raise your hand? Talk to me after the service. You have not had any of Sandy's potato salad. That must be the problem. Okay, so I want to emphasize this because there have been many of you who've said, well, we don't get together, we don't do anything. This is the big moment to do it. Some of you have been wanting to connect with me, and time has not been great, and we've not been able to do it the 17th for the picnic. That's the time to do it. I think it's important that as a body, as a church, that we find time to fellowship together, and when we have the opportunity, we need to take it. So this is what I'm asking that you do. Plan on coming and eating, because some of us like to, and those of you who don't, we're going to talk. But we also need some help. I can remember that one of the biggest things that I liked about church picnics was that people brought their best stuff out, and so you'd go, oh, okay, Don's going to be making this, and Sandy's going to be making this, and Pastor Christine might throw in something for dessert. But anyway, it was always good because you knew there was going to be a little bit of everything, and you got to enjoy it. So I'm asking you to definitely plan on coming. This is a great opportunity for us to get to know each other who don't know each other and want that opportunity. So let's take advantage of it. Also, the pickleball building behind us, it's going to be opening up, and we will get an opportunity to have a tour of it and to see it. So I'm expecting all of you that are hearing me, whether you're here today or you're watching this online later, show up for the picnic. Let's have a good time. Sign up for it, and let's enjoy, okay? All right. That being done, I don't know if it's these lights, but they're bright. It's not important to see me that greatly. All right. So today, my message is entitled, Come to the Table. And so, of course, I just give you an announcement about coming to the table. Thank you for those of you that are watching us and are not here today, and we'll be checking this out later. I want to open with prayer. Lord, today I invite you to be in what is said today. I believe that you want to have fellowship with each one of us, and that you are inviting us to sit at your table. I ask that your Holy Spirit will make real in the hearts of all that are hearing this message your desire to fellowship with us today. Come to the table. That table's not big enough, but thank you for putting it up there. I want to read to you one of the parables that Jesus spoke to his disciples, but he was actually speaking to the chief priests and the elders at the temple at the time, and he was answering a question. Starting in Matthew 22, 1 through 5. And Jesus answered and spake unto them again by parables, and said, The kingdom of heaven is like that of a certain king who made a marriage for his son. And he sent forth his servants to call them that were bidden to the wedding, and they would not come. Again, he sent forth other servants, saying, Tell them which are bidden, Behold, I have prepared my dinner, my oxen and my fattings are killed, and all things are ready. Come on to the marriage. But they made light of it, and they went their ways, one to his farm and another to his merchandise. So I want to talk a little bit about custom. At the time, if there was some big event coming up like a wedding, people knew about it in advance so they could kind of start preparing for it. Today, we do something like that. We call it a save the date, right? People send out cards before the big event saying save the date because it's coming. So then later you'll get the actual invitation with the information and all the details. Well, they didn't have Pony Express and stuff like that at that time, so they did have the save the date kind of thing. People knew. And when it was all prepared and ready, servants were sent out to let you know to come. And what happened is none of the people that were invited came. Now, it's interesting to me that nobody came. Now, the people that were invited at this point in this story, in this parable, were the Jews, or maybe what you might want to call the chosen, or those that had a special connection and I think that's important. How many of you received invitations to an event that you didn't attend for some good reason or some bad reason? We've had excuses. You know, some of us we felt like, well, they just sent it out to be polite. We're not really going to go. Or, you know, it doesn't exactly fit with my schedule. I have other things planned. You know, someone's invited you to a wedding, but you've got a vacation planned. So you're not going to the wedding. You've got this vacation planned. Some of you just don't want to go. Oh, I heard that. We know what I'm talking about. So anyway, it says in this parable that when they came out and said, okay, it's time, we're all ready, it's all prepared, come, some of them were busy doing other things. Some of them didn't want to come. Some of them gave excuses, but they didn't show. Matthew 22:8. Then said he to his servants, the wedding is ready, but they that were bidden were not worthy. They haven't come. How do you feel if you've prepared a big plan, graduation party for your child, wedding invitations for a big wedding, your 50th anniversary, whatever, and you've made these big plans, you've invited people, and they don't show? How do you feel? Are you mad? Probably not. To be honest, you're probably more disappointed. You think? You're just disappointed that nobody showed for this big thing that you've put all this work into. You've wanted them to come so you could celebrate. How many of you have ever thought about who have you disappointed by not showing to some of these events? And I'm not saying this to make you feel guilty, because sometimes, and honestly, in this world today, there are reasons why we don't show up for things. It's not on our priority list. That doesn't mean that those people aren't important, but other things, other family members, other things may interfere. But the fact that you may have disappointed somebody who desired to have your fellowship, how many of you have ever thought about that that's the reaction? How many of you have been the person that's planned and you're disappointed that those that you invited didn't show? That they didn't feel that it was important enough or whatever. And you're disappointed because you're not going to have that opportunity of fellowship with them, to share in your joy of what is going on. So when nobody showed, Matthew 22:9, he says, go ye therefore into the highways, and as many as ye shall find, bid them to come to the party. Now, I got to tell you, I'm one of those people that I like to entertain sometimes, and it's a big deal. You know, we'll have my family reunion coming up. I'm already getting things in order and planning the big meal and everybody gathered at the table. And that's been a struggle, but there have been times when at our home we've opened our doors for Thanksgiving. And of course, the first people on my list to invite are my family. And then the people that I have connection with that I'm closer to. And when those invitations start getting denied and they start saying they're not coming, I've kind of planned all this big feast. So I start finding other people to invite. Now, probably some of you don't do that. But you know what? I got a big table prepared, and I want to feed people, and I want to entertain people, and I want to enjoy fellowship with them. So I will invite those who couldn't come. I'll go find some other people to invite. That doesn't mean that the second round of people that are invited are any less important. Sometimes we think that. It doesn't mean that they're any less important. But generally speaking, when we put out an invitation to somebody, the first people we put out invitations to are family members and people that we have a connection with. And when those people choose not to, then we start looking for other people that we can have connections with. So in this parable, it's the same thing. This is Jesus inviting you to the table. And some of you, this would have been the Jews, because that would have been his connection. And when they didn't want to come or they couldn't come, then he sent servants out and said, hey, let's bring some people in. I want to have some fellowship. So that in this story, what happens is they go to the Gentiles, which would be everybody else. And part of this is that there is a part of us that desires to have fellowship. There's a part of Jesus that desires to have fellowship. And he wasn't exclusive. He opened the doors for everyone. He wanted everyone to come. Here's the part that I find interesting. Matthew 22:10. So those servants went out into the highways and gathered together as many as they found, both bad and good. And then the wedding was furnished with guests. Now, I have to be honest and tell you, there were people that were invited. When I was growing up, my parents had kind of this thing for Thanksgiving that we invited people to our homes that didn't have places to go, that didn't necessarily have homes, didn't necessarily have families. And some of the people that came, because of who my father was, were some of the people that were kind of street people. They didn't really have homes. And but we were taught, and we treated them all the same as we treated every family member at that table. Now, there was a gentleman who used to come, but he would not come and sit at our table. He would come. He was honored that we would invite him. He would come at what he thought was a couple of hours after the meal was done, and he'd come to the back door. And he'd say, well, hello, Miss Christine. I'd say, hey, Pee-wee. And he'd say, I could take some leftovers if there's some. I said, come on in, sit down at the table. Oh, no, that's okay. And then I'd go get my mom and dad, and they'd have to holler, come on in here, Pee-wee. We don't have none of that. But he was so, I'm not even sure what it was, but for whatever reason, he didn't feel worthy to come in and be a part of that. And he felt just comfortable that somebody would give him a plate and he would go on. Well, over the years, because this was many, many years, I was probably 11 or 12 when I met him. Finally, when I got married some 20 years later, he came and actually was part of everything, which was really wonderful. But he missed out on so much by not coming to the table. And he was never excluded, but sometimes our own feelings of inadequacy, our own feelings of unworthiness, maybe you think you're one of the bad people invited, will keep you from coming to the table. That is not God's intent. Everybody is invited. And it's not a back door, it's the front door. You were invited to his table, good or bad or whatever. And I thought about, okay, so let me explain to you what bad is. And then I thought, I don't know what bad is. Because bad is in your mind. When God sees you, he just sees you all as good. And he loves you, and he wants to have fellowship with you. So he invites you to that table. The other point that I want to point out in that verse is, not only are you invited, but you were sought after. He sent someone out looking for you. Now, I can remember one year that my dad, Pee-wee didn't show up. So my dad went to find him. Where are you? How come you didn't come get your food? Because it was important that he was a part of this. So they didn't just send out the invitation, but when nobody came, he sent people out to find you and to bring you in. And that's how God feels about you. He wants to bring you in. He cares about you. So here's the thing about accepting this invitation. It's an opportunity for you to fellowship. I have to tell you this story. For those of you who are Packer fans, forgive this little story about the Vikings. So Coach Dennis Green was a friend of mine, but he also was obviously the coach for the Vikings, for those of you who are so into the Packers you don't know these things. But what I want to tell you was he was a Christian, and he was very much involved in community and wanting people to be around the table. he created a group called the Bakers Club, and I received an invitation to be a part of it. Now, I have to tell you the truth, I had no idea what this was. But I got this invitation, and I thought, well, I'm going to go. I don't even know where the invitation came from, but it was at the Vikings headquarters, so I thought that was cool. So I was going. And when I got there, there was a lot of people, and I suddenly felt I was in the wrong place. That maybe I shouldn't have been here. I wasn't worthy to be a part of this group, even though I'd received an invitation. And so as the meeting started and he was introducing what this was all about, it was an opportunity for people to network who were involved in wanting to do community things and do good for other people. And he had everybody stand up. He says, okay, we're going to go around the table, and I want each of you to stand up and tell us your name and why you were invited. Well, now I was in trouble because I had no idea why I was invited. And then he also wanted you to say, who invited you? Oh, I didn't know who invited me. I felt like an absolute idiot. And people are standing up, and when it came to my turn, I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what to say. And he stood up, and he said, now, Christine doesn't know why she's here, but I'm going to tell you, I'm the one who invited her, and this is why I invited her. Well, boy, let me tell you, I felt pretty good then. But the point was, somebody saw me and cared enough to invite me to something that led to other things. A lot of times people will go to things that they're invited to because it's an opportunity to network. I know that's a big thing these days, and we want to network. And how cool is it when somebody who's an official acknowledges who you are? Boy, I tell you, that makes you feel good. And I want you to know that in your invitation to come to the table, you're getting an opportunity to network with other Christians. You're getting an opportunity to recognize that Jesus cares about you and that you're important and that he wants you to be at that table. And everybody who comes to that table is accepted, irregardless of what your position is or what your status is. Little sidebar. At the table of God, when you were invited, there's no children's table. How many of you remember being at family reunions and things, and then there was the table over here, and then there was the table for the kids? Did any of you experience that? Okay, well, at my grandmother's house, there was no such thing as the children's table. We were all over our relatives, in the middle, up. Some of us got on the table as little children, but we were never shushed away because we were children. Now, there was a time when we children asked to have our own table, to which my grandmother wasn't too happy, but we did get it. And I know that's kind of different for most people, but I do know, and I say this to you, there is no children's table. Everybody is welcome at the table. And for some of us, when we think of children as Christians, we think of those Christians who've been Christians for many, many years. And then we've got those Christians who may have just got here today and received their walk with the Lord. And so they're the children. But you know what? The children are at the table with the adults. And there's a reason for that. Because, see, when we had a children's table, manners went out the window. Okay? Even though we might have been crawling on the table as babies, you were pulled back and you were taught some things. There are things as children that you cannot learn if you're not around adults. Okay? So when we have a fellowship, when God invites us to the table, thank you. Thank you. When God invites us to the table, he doesn't have a separation. It's not children over in this corner, adults over in this corner. That's because we're supposed to learn from each other. There's a reason for that. I want to talk about, there is some value about people gathering and sharing a meal. When I was a kid growing up, dinner time at my house was at 5 o'clock. Not 5:01, 5 o'clock. And as we grew up, and kids, you know, you get to go out on your own. You're outside playing. You don't have your parents standing there watching you. Let me tell you, when 5 o'clock came, we better be at that table. I don't care what you were doing. I don't care if you had a watch on or not. You were not late for dinner at my house. Those were consequences you did not want to endure. And to be really honest, I don't remember a whole lot of consequences because it was so well ingrained in us to be there on time. Now, as a kid, I did not understand the benefits of having dinner together as a family. But here's some of the things that as I look back and count them, I can see. At our dinner table, everything you needed was there. How many have heard of, oh my goodness, somebody's sick, let's take them chicken soup? Yeah? I don't know what it is about chicken soup that's supposed to do the trick, but we take them soup. And I want you to know that when you come to the table of God, He has everything you need. He wants to provide you with everything you need. And He will nourish you with everything you need. Birthdays at my house at dinner time was wonderful because if it was your birthday, you got to eat your favorite meal. That was, no questions asked, your favorite meal was served on your birthday. Now, if somebody in the family didn't like that favorite meal, too bad, because that's what we're having. The other thing, admonishment happened at our table. If somebody was wrong, if somebody did something wrong that needed to be corrected, it was done in a nice, kind way, but it was done. Now, for my siblings who may be listening, don't get offended. I was the good kid. Why are you laughing? I learned from what they did wrong. I'm one of those people that I'd rather see you get it wrong so I can find out what the results are so I don't have to enact it. Now, probably you guys aren't like that. You just learn however. But I will tell you, of all of us 5 kids, I'm probably the one who got in trouble the least. I know you're listening. I'm the one who got in trouble the least because I learned from everybody else's mistake. So there was some value about coming to the dinner table and learning who messed up and what they did and figure out what those consequences are. Also, this is how we learn to fellowship with each other and to interact. Because with 5 kids, we're all different ages. My youngest sister is 12 years younger than I am. So there's a lot going on in a house and a lot of different things happening. But when we came together at the table, we were all connected, so we kind of knew what was happening in each of our lives, and we had that connection. It's the same thing with God's table. He wants us to be connected. As I look out here and look at this group, and I think of those of you who are listening, as we are followers of God and we come to God's table, there's a lot going on in our lives. All of us have different lifestyles and different things, but there's a part of us that needs to connect because we have the same Father. And to understand and to be able to empathize and sympathize, rejoice and cry with other members of our family because of what they're going through is an awesome thing. My mother was a great cheerleader at the table. My brothers were all in sports. I was in different things. But as each one needed to be acknowledged for what they were accomplishing and what they were doing, there was lots of cheers going around there. And that was awesome. That happened at our table. The correction happened at our table. The thing that I know mostly was the fellowship that happened. So we had what we call trash talk. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Okay, so trash talk happened a lot at our table. And in fact, those who were invited to be guests, we tried to warn them. Okay? Because if you can stand all the trash talk that's happening, you're welcome to this table. But just be careful, because it's coming. But part of that was an affirmation of we love you who you are, warts and all. Never at our table did we not feel loved. Now, we might have felt uncomfortable. That uncomfortableness came from we've probably done something we weren't supposed to do, hoping it doesn't get out to the table. Or because of what we've done or not done, we feel unworthy. But that was never what my parents portrayed to us. So I want to say that sometimes when you come to the table, You might feel unworthy. You might feel that you've messed up. That is not the message that Jesus is portraying to you. At his table, you are welcome, warts and all, faults and all, the good and the bad. You are loved. And that was the one thing that we knew about our table, was that we were loved. Now, I have to tell you, this did get put to the test. My oldest brother and I were messing around, and I pushed him. We had a big, huge sliding glass door, and we had wooden floors, to which my father had just recently buffed, shined, and they were slippery. And somehow I managed to push him in our confrontation or whatever was happening with us, and he hit the door at the right point, and the window cracked and shattered. My life was over. I was going to be dead in the next 10 minutes. I believed that firmly. And my mother heard the noise. She ran upstairs, and oh my gosh, she was not a happy woman, let's just put it that way. And because I was so sure she was going to kill me, I ran and hid in a bathroom and locked the door in the basement. And I was trying desperately to climb out the window and run away. But the window was too high. And going out the door meant my death. I did not know what to do. So this was sometime in the afternoon, because the 5 o'clock dinner hour came. And prior to that dinner hour coming, my mother said, "You need to come out of there." And I'm just thinking, she's going to kill me. She's just going to kill me. I heard her spank my brother. He lived, but I knew I was going to get the worst in, so I was avoiding this. 5 o'clock came, and I was really in a quandary, because not being at the dinner table was sure death. And I'm thinking, we've never been killed at the table. So I go to the table. And my mother said nothing about the incident at the table. I want you to know how hard it was to eat. I couldn't swallow. I knew I was in trouble. And yet we went through dinner, and we had dinner. My mother talked about a couple of things, school and whatever. That was not brought up again at that moment. To which I knew, when the dinner's over, I will die. But I tell you this because that dinner, coming to the table, in spite of my insecurities and my fears, I was loved at that table. I was loved at that table. Now, I got to tell you, I didn't understand that, because I knew I deserved to die right now. How many of you have ever felt that way? Okay? But I was still invited, summoned, sought after to be at that table. And I want you to know that's what God does for you. He doesn't care what you've done. He doesn't care that you think you deserve to die. That's not what he's serving up at the table. What happened at that table, although I was uncomfortable and couldn't fully accept it, was fellowship. My siblings were suddenly supportive, because I think they thought I was going to die too. You okay? Do you want some more? But you know what? That was the love that we had been taught, that we had experienced, that now we're experiencing. I want to take a look at the supper table of Jesus when he had his disciples. In Luke 22, 14, 15, it says, "When the hour came, Jesus and his apostles reclined at the table, and he said to them, 'I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer.'" Two things I want to point out about this verse. They reclined at the table. That kind of, when someone says they're reclining at the table, what do you think of? relaxing. This is not a rush. We're not going to grab the food and run on and eat it and go. We're going to relax. We're going to enjoy that. We don't have a lot of that in this American culture. Growing up and going to school, I studied other cultures, and particularly I think about the French culture. In France, literally, everything closed down for 2 hours in the afternoon. Kids came home from school and went to their families. Stores closed. There was no business taking place. That was time for families to come together. You did not get, like here in our country, around the dinner hour, you get phone calls from people soliciting stuff. We get all that interference. This would never happen in that culture because that was just not heard of. That's not what you do. But the idea was that it was important to fellowship around the table. Other countries have other cultures where the same type of thing, that there's time. They take siestas, and it's every day. You do that. There's time to relax and enjoy family. They put priorities there. We are a microwave society. And for the most part, we don't take that attitude of relaxing and enjoying and fellowshipping together at the table. It's a quick, okay, dinner's on the table, we got to go. Somebody's got this game over here. Somebody's got this over here. Someone's got that over here. Oh, my goodness, the news is coming on. There's just other things happening. And I find it interesting that that's one of the first things that's said in this when he's going to have dinner with his disciples is that he reclined. It's part of the culture, yes, but there is something about we're going to relax and enjoy it. The closest thing that I can think of that we do that in this country is Thanksgiving dinner and everybody wears stretch pants. Just saying. But that was important, that the atmosphere was set, that this is not a rushed meal. We're going to enjoy time. And then he says, I eagerly desire to eat this Passover with you. He's eager to have that fellowship with them. He wants to be with them. This is important to him. Not a rush job, saying we came together, but a time for him to sit down and have fellowship with them. And I wonder in our lives, when we receive the invitation to have fellowship with God, are we on a schedule? Okay, let's see here. I can squeeze you in at 4. I got a meeting at 5. I can push it maybe to 5:10. Think about that. Because for some of us, when we receive the invitation, we feel unworthy. We don't feel we deserve to go. For others of us, yeah, I'm going to get there. Okay, I know it's important. And we're just there for a few moments. Or we're off somewhere else in our mind. We've not taken the time to really enjoy the fellowship. For some of us seasoned Christians, we know that it's important to come to the table. We have our devotions every day. But let's just be honest. How many of us are taking time to linger? How many are just doing our duties? Sometimes going to the table when it's 5 o'clock at my house, when we were raising up as kids, it was a duty. It wasn't necessarily, oh, we're going to all get together. It's like, come on, I got things to do, especially when I had a teenager. Let me tell you, when you're at that teenage point, we don't even hardly have time for family. We have things to do. And some, they're good things. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think that sometimes in our Christian walk, we hit those teenage years where we got to come because we know what we're supposed to, but we have things to do. And it may be good things. After all, I got to get out and go witness to so-and-so. Oh, my goodness, I got to go over here and pray for this. I got to be at church. I have to be over here. All good things, but not necessarily the right thing. And then, for those seasoned Christians who've gotten beyond those teenage years, we understand it. We still want to come and go and do our thing. Do we understand the importance of training and fellowshipping with the younger ones? Remember, the children are at the table. What are we doing to help with that? All are invited to the table, and there's a reason and there's a purpose. What is it that we are doing at the table? So let's talk a little bit about, again, who's at the table. If we looked at, and I encourage you to go and read your Bibles this week. I always challenge you. If I'm wrong, come back and let me know. Go and read the story of the Last Supper. And Pastor Chris has been talking about things from Luke, and he talked about the different people that Jesus called his disciples. Now, if you think about that motley crew, we've got the person that's not well liked. We got that Matthew, that tax collector. And you've got the fishermen, and then you've got those who are in the Pharisees and stuff. They're all at the table. Most of us are not inviting to the table people we don't like, or that it's not necessarily going to have the conversation that we want to have, or doesn't necessarily fit into our little cliquey thing. But at the Last Supper, all of those elements were there. Some of those disciples were actually hated, not necessarily by the disciples, and we know not by Christ. Some of them were in high standing, and they're all at the same table. And yet, he says he desires to have fellowship with them all. Now, at that table, I imagine things happened to that table much like they did around my family table. And if you go and read that story, you'll see some of those things. They were admonished. They were shown love because Jesus washed their feet. Honey, you got to have love to wash somebody's feet. I know everybody thinks they have great-looking feet until somebody else has to look at them. Just saying. If somebody washes your feet, you're going to feel loved. You're going to feel cared for. He did not punish anybody at the table, but he told truth, and he tried to model how they should react. Just wanting to point out that he acknowledged that Judas was going to betray him. And as you read that story, Judas did not stay at the table. He left early. And I point that out because some of us come to the table. We may get admonished. We might get corrected. But we don't hang out. We get our little feelings hurt or whatever, and we leave. And I'm suggesting to you that if we stay at the table, the Lord will feed us what we need. But it is your choice to come to the table. It's your choice to stay at the table. But I'm saying there are benefits at being at the table, putting your feet under the table, being there with the Lord. When I was in college, I can remember I was away from home. And boy, it just seemed like sometimes things were so overwhelming, so hard, such a struggle. All I wanted to do was go home and put my feet under the table. There was something about going home and sitting at the table with my parents that was edifying, that was uplifting, that was encouraging, that was strengthening. And I was able to go back and do what I needed to do. And I'm suggesting to you the same thing. If you haven't been at the table for a while, if you haven't lingered at the table for a while, there are benefits there for you. If you're sick, he's got chicken soup for you. If you're lacking in iron, he's got some liver for you. Didn't say you were going to. I didn't say you were going to like everything he had for you, but it's there for you. If you're sad, if you're hurting, if you're struggling, at the table of Christ that he's prepared for you is where you're going to get what you need. We need to learn to linger at the table. We need to learn that there is something for us at the table. There's benefits. I challenge you today to think about your life. Maybe you've never come to the table. Maybe you've ignored the invitation. Maybe you have not chosen to recognize that you didn't just get an invitation. He's out there. He's sending those out there to bring you in. You are welcome to come to his table. At God's table, he has the bread of life for you. And there's the wine of redemption. And he wants to give that to you. And when you accept that, you are part of his body. You are part of his fellowship. He desires so much to fellowship with you. He's not into wanting to punish you. But as a good parent, he wants to give you what you need. He wants to correct you so that you can live a better life. He wants you to be the best. But most importantly, he wants to fellowship with you. The bad, the good, and for some of you who think better, that you're the better, he wants to have fellowship with you. He desires to spend time with you. And my question is, how much time do we willing to spend with him? Are we part of that microwave society that you got 1 hour? Let's get it there and hurry up and get in here and get what we have. Do we desire to linger with Jesus, to hang out? Incidentally, that was not a 2-hour dinner that they had that night before he went to the cross for you. I'm asking for you to take this time to think about what is it you need at the table of God? Because you're all invited. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter what your position in life is. Doesn't matter how bad you've been or how bad you think you've been. It doesn't matter if you think you're worthy. And just for a note, some of you who might think you're holier than thou or better than, you're invited to the same table. Yeah. We need to think about that. We're going to close a little different. We said we were going to have communion at the end. When I get finished speaking, they're going to play a song. And I want you to take this time to sit, listen, watch it on the thing, this table, and see where you are in your life. And what is it God wants you to come to the table to receive? Maybe it's healing. Maybe it's your spirit needs to be filled with good things. Maybe you need some correction. Maybe you just need to linger for the fellowship. Whatever it is you need, God has it for you at his table. So we're going to listen to this song, and then when that song comes to an end, I invite you to come to the table. Come and take communion. And to think about when you take this, that is the bread of life that he's offering you. That is his wine, his blood. That is your redemption that makes you worthy to be at his table. I want you to take the time to think about that. We're going to close with that tonight. I'm going to ask that if you need prayer, speak to the person next to you. Ask someone to pray with you. Feel free to come up here in groups if that's how you want, because that's what that fellowship is all about. If you need prayer, I will be here. Autumn, are you here? Yes. Autumn, will you come up and be in the front here? Pastor Autumn is here, and if she needs to, and you need her to pray with you, she'll be available also. I will be here. But I want you to right now, just to take this time as we play this song, to think about what is it you need from the table. so that you can come, partake of God's table, and ask for what you need. Lord, as we move into this part where we come and have fellowship with you at the table, I ask that you would move on the hearts of those that are here today, that everybody that is hearing my voice will recognize that you have invited them to the table, that this table is all inclusive. There is no one who's being excluded, that you desire to have fellowship with each and every one of us. Whatever our shortcomings may be, whatever our warts may be, those things don't matter. You desire to have time with us. So I pray that, Lord, as we move into this part, our hearts will be open to hear what it is you want to do for us at this time at your table. In Jesus' name, amen.